Hello and welcome back to the channel. It's Mark from Powersonic and Apprentice 1-to-1. Another van video. Not done one of these in months, but I'm going out onto site. We're installing another PV system. Thought I'd bring you along to see exactly what we're doing at the minute. We've gone for our MCS assessment now. I've changed tact a little bit after that in how we're approaching it. So I am using some dedicated software, whereas before I was trying to work with the downloadable documents from the MCS website and mixing that in with Tradify. It's not worked. So I've swapped to Paperclip. We're going to have a look at that out on site. I'll take you through some of the things that can do, the surveying, and then also the job sheets. We'll tie this into a couple of parts, I think. So the first part, we'll look at the survey, the software, and then the installation of the inverter and working around with the consumer unit and stuff on the job itself. So you can see the inverter going in, the DC isolators and all that good stuff. And for those of you installers who are following this, wondering about going through MCS and getting set up in the solar sector yourselves, I'll try and include a bit of content around that. So I'll spin you around and we'll have a look at Paperclip on my iPad. So I'll show you a Paperclip on the desktop as well, but this is basically the job I've got open now for a phantom job we've created. So if we go in and look here, you can download the site survey form. Sorry if I click the right button. We can download the site survey form. That will then generate onto the iPad and you can edit it while you're out on site basically, which is what I do. It's how we approach it. So if I go into the downloads here, oh sorry, we're into the wrong section. I need to press download. So it's now downloading. You can see there it got reasonable signal. So if we hit that button, it'll open it up and you can see we've got all of that pre-populated. If you click the pen icon in the top, you can fill all this in. So gather all your data from your M-pans, fill in the compass for the direction of the array, any shading, take a picture of the roof pitch, get all of the data that's on this list, basically work your way through it. I'm not going to do that on this video because it'd just take too long, but it all does that, and then you save it and re-upload that back into the software. So you can see this little upload button. And as you work through these tick boxes, I'll show you on the desktop a little bit better later on this video, they all start turning green. You can download risk assessments, method statements, all specific to the job. There's the job sheets, there's the test data, it all pulls into it. And then when you're finished, at the end here, you get to register your MCS certificate, mark it as complete, and produce a handover pack for the customer, which is what it's all about. And then it all is registered for your MCS assessment. But we'll look at this on the desktop in a little bit more detail later on. Let's get straight to the install and go and see what the guys are up to. So you can see this is the main consumer unit already in place on this install. It is a split load board. It does have the type A RCDs, but we're going to shuffle all this around to accommodate an SPD and an MCB for our solar inverter. So we'll show you a bit of that later on and how we come about to achieve it. We've got our trunking going up here. See the guys have been busy putting that on. So full length, top to bottom, because there's potentially going to be some batteries here in the future, not at present. And then we've got our horizontal trunking here, and the inverter's going to live just up here. We'll show you that coming together in a minute. We're going to put our DC isolators down this side. The meter's going to live just in that corner there. And then we're going to have an AC isolator just underneath this consumer unit with a run of conduit bridging these wires to get our AC over to the inverter. So we'll jump on with the video and get all this on the wall, and I'll show you it being wired up in just a minute. So we've got the power back on now into the house, and you can see we've had a little shuffle around. So we've got our SPD here that we need, and we've also got our 32 amp circuit that's going to run off and do the inverter. Everything else has largely remained the same. There was a couple of breakers that didn't have any cables in, so we've done away with those and made some space. You see we've got our AC isolator underneath there. That's got a grommet in there on the metal box, so we know we've not got any cables running through, and we've brought the insulation through as well. There's a data cable which is rated up to 300 volts, which runs through, and that's for the CT to be added in later on. Now we've got our DC isolators on the wall here. You can see they're all cut in and ready to go. So we've got our holes through, ready to pop the cables into there when we drop our strings down. We've got our meter on here ready. So we've got the cables coming through, and again, not gone for one of the extended housings on this, just gone for a smaller one and popped it straight onto the trunking. I'm going to put our SPD enclosure under here now, and obviously we've got some of our saddles to go on the bit of conduit here across between A to B, neaten all that up. These isolators are a bit on the small side, so these are new Lex, they've been supplied by Rexel. We'd normally go for something a bit bigger, to be honest. but they're here now and we've used them. It is a bit of a fiddle trying to get in. They don't leave much wiring room, as you can see, but that is what it is. So we'll jump back when we've got the inverter on the wall, and then we'll run through wiring up all the bits and pieces with the SPD and the inverter and such, and into these isolators, and then we're ready to start tackling the outside work. Okay, so last time we checked in with all of this, I was doing things slightly differently. For those of you who followed the video on my journey through MCS and getting set up for solar, I was using the templates that are on the MCS website, download and build my QMS manual. I was using Tradify and trying to bring everything external to what the business does day to day. But I've since changed approach, having now had my MCS assessment and trying to get all of the paperwork in order around that, essentially using folders on a OneDrive and piecing bits together and then trying to make it play nicely with Tradify. It was a bit clunky, didn't really work, and it was wasting lots of my time on admin, producing risk assessments, method statements and such that are varied and different based on the roof structures, pulling all of that together into a handover pack. I saw someone else using Paperclip, and that's what we have now gone for ourselves. Now, we're not using that to manage all of our job management side of things. We've pulled back to use Service Mates, that's Service M8. I've shared it on the channel before. We use it for the day-to-day running of our business. It has lots more functionality than some of the other offerings out there like Tradify, so you can make your own forms, for example, which we use extensively. There's the QR codes that you can apply to things for a simple scan to then jump back to the job file. It's really useful for engineers, and it's just a lot more heavy weighted in functionality than some of the other offerings that are out there. So we've gone back to that and we're tying it up now with Paperclip. I'll explain a little bit about what Paperclip is in just a second. I did manage to get a document procedure manual and everything all done the old-fashioned way. I printed one out here. Basically, it has the method you're going to use to deliver the installation of solar panels and battery storage as a manual. So it's kind of looking through your processes, then making sure you're recording all the data you need from the clients to your suppliers, your records of equipment calibration, for example, the training, your document register. You need to reference every single document that you hold based in and around this, from the regs to all the different MCS standards. And they need to be in a register, not just held as individual files. So it is quite intense, and I'm going to take you through Paperclip now. So I'll zoom me down on the screen. We'll open up the Paperclip website. It is all just run through a web browser, as far as I'm aware anyway. We are relatively new to using this, and it's quite handy. There's loads of features baked into this which are great when you're doing your surveys and also when you are putting together the jobs running through the process. Now, I will say with this, it's not paid or sponsored or anything like that. It's just something that I've had suggested to me from another installer. So let's zoom right down. You should be able to see my Paperclip home screen now. And there is a process you have to go through to get this all set up, which involves running through a tick list, basically. Uploading evidence of your certificates, your VAT number, company registration, all bits and pieces around that to get set up. And then the engineers you want to use the system, the admin staff. So you're building up that base set for you to then work from. Now, one of the key aspects of your MCS is having this particular bit all taken care of. So there's your QMS manual, which we've got in here as well. We can do audit reports. There's a list of master documents, and then your internal review meetings. So if I click into that one, you can see you need to be completing an internal review every 3 months, which is a meeting essentially to review the processes you've been using, how the jobs have been going, if there's any extra training that's needed, incidents that might have happened, and those meetings need to be minuted. So this helps you with that, which is fantastic. And again, if we go into the master documents, the ones that are important to us largely is in this one section here. So you can see we've got all of the G98, G99 forms, the guide to the install of PV systems. So if we go to actions on that one and view document, for example, it will download it. We can then open it and see exactly what this should be doing. And you can see this was produced in 2012, so it's an older document alongside the ECA, but it's in there for us to reference should we wish. And then there's some of the more modern documents that are to do with MCS itself. So you can see those in there. You've got the battery standard, which is your MIS 3012. We've got the MIS 3002, solar PV standard and such, and they're all in there
for us to reference during an MCS assessment, and also when we're out doing works, it's accessible for the company and we can evidence that we've actually seen and got copies of these. Same with electrical. If we go into there, you can see we've got the memorandum of electricity at work regs. Now we could add other documents into this if we wanted, for example, to say that we hold a copy of BS 7671, and then we would just state where that is held. So in book format at the office, or the IET code of practice for sort of photovoltaic systems or energy storage systems. So that's all in there. And then the QMS manual itself, so you click that button, it will basically produce that for you based on all of the other data I'd mentioned. So entering about the engineers, your insurance, all the other bits and pieces that you need, the data it's going to want for producing a generic risk assessment method statement. And these are all then adjusted based on individual clients and customers. You can see we've got the quality management procedures manual here. It's got all of your statements you need, all of the responsible people. It's basically the manual. So it explains how everything else works from that. So if you're going through your assessment, you need to be able to produce one of these, but you also need to understand it. So my biggest tip for anyone who is going through MCS registration is to actually look at the QMS manual, read it and understand what every single part is wanting, because you will need to evidence an understanding of it and then be able to navigate quickly to a document when you are going through your MCS assessment. So for example, when I had my visit, I was asked to evidence a document register of all of the publications we use. So that's basically your MCS standards, the wiring regs, guidance stocks, as we just spoke about, and they need to be listed, and then a location of where they are stored or accessible needs to be on there. Now obviously, if at the time I was using Paperclip, I went through that still using the old paper method and folders on a OneDrive. It's just a click of a mouse and really, really quick and simple to be looked at and evidence to that assessor. So it's helping with your assessment, but also helping ongoing with the jobs you're building up there. Also, you need to insert your products and suppliers. So if you're using Midsummer, Excel, CEF, whoever it is, they all need to go in there. The products themselves as well. So especially your solar panels, your inverters, your metering equipment, and your fixing, fastening system you're using on the roof spaces, they all need to go in there with their part numbers, their anticipated usage outputs, so for your solar panels, for example, also the sizes, and then any data sheets that come alongside them, you need to upload them into there, because when you're running through a client-specific job, all of that data gets built into the handover pack and your surveys and such as you're running through it. We'll have a look at that in a second. I'm going to have to blur out some of the data on the next page we're going to look at, because it will involve some customer data as well. But I want to give you a feel of the software, so we're going to delve into it. Okay, so I did just try and show you some of our existing jobs using the Paperclip software, but it has that much client data in it as you would expect, really. It was a bit of a dumb idea. I'm going to show you very quickly inside a new job. We're just going to make a fake job up. So if we go to MCS PV, because we're going to do an MCS job, I'll put me in as the customer. So this is just basic data entry that you need to put in place for the job itself. We'll pretend it's we're going to have to put a real place in, actually, aren't we? We'll use the academy address here, because I don't see any harm with that. Let's see if I can find it in the list. It's workshop unit 12, so we'll just choose that and pop it across into there. So we should be able to do that. We'll say we got it as a referral and save. So now we've got our job, and it pre-populates that over into your actual work file. And you can see as you run across here, you've got the options for adding any files you want, your proposals as you build them, your purchase and serial numbers as you build them. But the main page is this gateway, and is what we need to do is work through this journey to success section. So you do a pre-sales survey, which is basically looking at the roof of the place you intend to fit the panels to. So you can see in this instance, we are not in that row of units, we're in this row of units here. So if we pop that on there, and we can pop our little man down on the road looking at the door, and that is us in there. So that works, and we now need to do 4 pins on the corner of the roof space. Oops-a-daisy. Let's pop it over this side, that side, and I'm just going to have to squeeze that off there. So we'll do that, and then that's that bit. We can then proceed. You can see we've got a 229 square metre roof according to my very roughly drawn out pins up there. So we'd then book a site survey, select whatever date you want to do it, pop that in there. That stuff is all the basics. The site survey itself, you can download what is a pretty useful form for collecting all of the data you're going to need. It is easy to forget. We have a form within ServiceMate as well that we can use, but this is as good as anything. So you just put your electricity provider, the DNO, your MPAN number, locations of things, the earthing system, all of that good stuff. Take some pictures, the angle of the roof pitch. It's reminding you to do all of these things. Data is everything when you were doing a solar PV survey, so get as much as you can. If you want, you can draw and sketch. We tend to collect all of the sizes and information that you need and then revert back to Easy PV to produce the actual design. It just works a lot nicer that way. I think you get all of your structural calculations as well that you need. Using Paperclip, you can do the roof survey aspect in the software, but it's like £75 a job, and unless it's a particularly complicated roof, we would use a surveyor to come out and look at that anyway. You then need to check the EPC. You can create a proposal, which is basically the data you've entered in terms of the inverters and bits and pieces you would drag across. So if we do a new proposal, you can see here on the product side of things, if I go into a category and we do the PV inverters, you can see this is all stuff I've popped in there. So we've got our select system, and if we go for a single phase, you can see it pops up there. We can put our pricing in, if there's any VAT that's applicable, and then that would transfer down into the job and tick that off. So we'll just put that in as 1,500 quid for now. Tick the box, pops in there. You can see the inverter's gone green. So that's now done that. You would build it up for the rest of the system as well. I won't do that now because this video will end up turning into a marathon. It's probably already going to be long enough, but you'd pop all of that in and then it builds your proposal up so you can move on to the next section in the list. So you can see down here, you can do your on-roof panel layout. So if you want, you can do this with the download template. As I said, we upload our own after using Easy PV. So if you've not checked out Easy PV, watch the prior video I did on this and have a look at that as well. And you just work through it as you've built up. You say if the proposal's won or lost, get the contract signed, take your deposits, do a roof appraisal. As I say here, they will do you those for £75. Or if you want it with guaranteed return in 24 hours, they'll do it for 125. We've got our own mechanism of doing that outside the software, so we don't need to be going down that route. You then get to the payment stage, booking your installations, checking the earthing. You've got your risk assessments and method statements. Obviously with this one, as you're building up the other things earlier on in the job, so it's not going to be fully done and dusted, I don't think, in looking at it at this stage, because we haven't gone through that process, but you do get a specific risk assessment for that site, and it explains the risks, and that again is based on what you've put in earlier on in setting up your account with Paperclip. And it's specific for the job, and you can pass that on to anyone who's working on that particular install. And again, when you're out on site as the installation engineer, you can see you've got your PV array test. So you can download one of these and have a look at that while you're out on site to make sure you're collecting all of the data you need when you're commissioning your PV system. So you're getting all of that in there. There's your tick lists that you need to go through for everything you should be checking, and the values of everything you need to record, and we'll show that later on in this video when we're out on site commissioning this PV system. So I don't want to dwell too much on the software side of things because I want to look at the install, but I was just showing you the basic way that you can use Paperclip to manage your MCS job. It basically takes you through making sure you're using MCS approved materials, that you're following the required process, keeping the documents you need to have audits later on and evidence, and then saving all that in a safe and secure location for anyone who comes back to look at it later on. It works through REC and HICE as well, so it all kind of ties together with those systems for your consumer protection, keeps it all in one place, and then right at the end you can produce a detailed handover pack. So we've got our route through to outside. You can see there, punched through with a conduit up the side of the building, and we're going to drop 2 strings through there. You can see we've got one passed out already. Nathan's just up in the loft waiting to pass that one out. And then round the other side in the garage, you can see we've got our inverter now on the wall.
So we've got our Solax hybrid inverter on the wall, and we've got most of the equipment mounted now, so I thought it was a good time to jump back. You can see we've got our high tough cable coming down, which is power for the hybrid inverter. That loops out of the meter. So obviously our AC comes down into the isolator through the conduit, down into the meter. We then go off in the high tough over to the inverter. Now if this inverter was remote from the consumer unit and that main isolator, you'd have to fit another AC isolator local to it, but we're near enough here just to use the one, so we're happy with that. We've got our DC isolators here with the red posi cables wired in on the output side. They run down into this SPD enclosure for now. We're waiting on the SPDs, but they're imminently arriving. Matthew moved on a little bit too quickly with the DC cabling into the inverter, and he's made off all red leads into the bottom of it, so we're going to have to overmark the negative cables on that now to black. It is what it is. The plugs that come with this, you have to use the ones that come with the inverter. They've been used now, so we're going to have to do that. The black cabling has arrived. It was on order and due in, and we're using that to go out through our conduit here and up into the loft as shown outside. We'll show you up in the loft in a bit as well. So we can get this inverter powered up soon, hopefully today, so we can get the AC on, get it connected to the internet, and then we are just waiting on the roof work. We should be able to button up these DC isolators, get the SPDs in, and basically finish this area. There is going to be some batteries going in the future on this, which is why it is a hybrid inverter. The customer asked for one of those, having originally just spec'd a solar inverter. So we've got the option there, allowed for space to fit a couple of batteries in, should they so wish. And again, we're in a garage space here, so we're nicely separated from the rest of the house. There is smoke detection, and we're good on that front. So I hope you found that interesting. Looking at that Solax system being installed, you can see now we're at a stage ready for the solar panels on the roof. We'll jump back into part 2 of that next. So these panels are going on in landscape form, so we've done a few videos on portrait already. I'll show you the hooks going on, how we fix them, how we work around the tiles. We'll lift the panels up onto the scaffold, show you how we do that in what we're terming a safe method, but we'll share it on the channel, and you can see for yourselves exactly how we're approaching it and how that tallies in with the design through Easy PV, which I will link in the video as well, so you can have a look at that alongside our installation efforts in part 2. See you on the next one. If you've got any comments around this video, drop them in below. I'm happy to try and help. There are some other videos I've got on my channel already around solar PV, MCS. If there's any questions about any of that, please do get in touch on any of the social media platforms or in the comments below. And otherwise, I'll see you on the next one.